They don't say it out loud, but you feel it, that quiet friction, the tightening in their voice when you don't react the way you're supposed to, when you don't chase, don't flinch, don't need anything. You walk into a room and say nothing, yet the silence wraps around their nerves like a wire. Because you're not trying to belong, you're not performing, you are simply there, self-contained, and that terrifies them more than rage ever could. People don't fear men who seek approval, they fear the ones who don't. The ones who don't smile to make you comfortable, who don't shrink to make you feel tall, the ones who can disappear without leaving a note. Because when a man truly needs nothing from you, not your validation, not your praise, not even your understanding, he becomes untouchable. And in a world built on transaction, a man who cannot be bought is dangerous. They call him distant, antisocial, emotionally unavailable. They throw labels at him like darts, hoping one will stick. But it's not detachment, it's freedom. The kind that Nietzsche wrote about, the kind that burns old values to the ground and rebuilds them from ash. You see, when a man becomes sovereign, truly sovereign, he doesn't follow scripts. He doesn't inherit belief systems like furniture passed down through guilt. He invents, he creates. He stands alone not because he has to, but because he chooses to, and the system has no category for that. It only understands roles. The lover, the worker, the follower, the son. But when he refuses the role, when he refuses to be someone else's mirror, they panic. Because people don't want you to be free. They want you to be familiar. Most people live in captivity with invisible chains, chains forged out of social obligation, emotional dependence, the need to be liked. But then someone walks away from it all, and his silence exposes their bondage. That's why they say he's broken, because he stopped begging to be healed. The man who doesn't need you isn't heartless. He's simply whole. He's done the work most people spend their lives avoiding. He's stared into the abyss, into the scream inside his chest, and didn't look away. He faced the nights when no one texted back, when the silence felt like a punishment. But instead of running, he listened, and in that solitude, something strange happened. He stopped needing the noise. He realized the very thing he feared, being alone, was where his power lived. Not because it made him special, but because it made him real. This man doesn't find value in attention. He finds it in self-possession. You can ignore him, misunderstand him, mislabel him, and he will not flinch. That's what unnerves people. You see, when you don't need anyone's permission to exist, you can't be manipulated. You become immune to the emotional blackmail society runs on. You won't be coerced with shame or seduced with praise, because you've tasted the purity of standing alone, and it didn't kill you. It awakened you. And this awakening isn't some grand epiphany. It's slow, brutal, honest. It comes when you stop lying to yourself. When you peel back the masks and face the raw, unfiltered reality of who you are beneath the roles. That's where Nietzsche begins, not with conformity but with confrontation. He didn't believe in inherited values, he believed in crucibles, in inner fires, in creating truth through the act of becoming. Most men never become anything because they never separate themselves from the collective. They become who they were told to be, by family, by school, by media. They inherit dreams that were never theirs, values they never questioned, lives that never felt like their own. They smile on cue, love on command, follow rules without ever asking who wrote them. And they call that being a good man. But Nietzsche would call that being a domesticated one. The truly dangerous man doesn't follow morality. He defines it. Not recklessly, but with precision. Because he's torn down the scaffolding of who he thought he was, and in its place built something real. And the process is violent. It means leaving comfort, losing people, questioning everything. It means facing the part of yourself that still wants to be liked, and asking why. It means burning down your persona, the identity you polished for others, and walking naked into your own psyche. Because until you do that, you're not alive. You're just a projection. This is what Jung called individuation. Not self-help, not self-improvement, but the painful excavation of the real self. The one hidden under trauma, obedience, expectation, the one you buried to survive childhood, school, love. Jung believed most people don't want to be whole, they want to be accepted. And acceptance often requires abandoning your soul. You sacrifice your depth for connection. You amputate your truth to be understood. But the man who individuates, he doesn't do that. He reclaims what was buried. He pulls his energy back from the roles, the people, the stories, and asks the one question society fears. Who was I before I became who you needed me to be? And that question changes everything, because once you taste the self before the mask, everything false begins to fall apart. The relationships that were built on performance, the career that was fueled by insecurity, the values you inherited without question, all of it starts to dissolve. And it hurts, because letting go of a false life feels like dying. But it's not death, it's rebirth. Nietzsche called this the process of becoming the Übermensch, not a superior man in the arrogant sense, but one who transcends the herd, who no longer needs their validation to feel real. He warned that the greatest battle isn't against the world, it's within, against your own cowardice, your own comfort, your own desire to fit in. And if you win that battle, you don't become perfect, you become free. You see, freedom isn't the absence of rules, it's the ability to create your own. Most people think they're free because they can choose what to wear, what to eat, what to watch, but they're still owned by algorithms, by anxiety, by the endless fear of being unseen. They confuse options with autonomy. But the dangerous man doesn't play in that sandbox. He doesn't need 10 choices, he needs one. The truth. And truth doesn't need applause, it doesn't need to trend. It doesn't care how it makes you feel, it just is. And when a man aligns with that, he becomes very difficult to manipulate. Because now, you can't shame him. He's already faced his shame. You can't cancel him, he's already walked away. You can't tempt him, he's not hungry anymore. And that's why they fear him, not because he's cruel, but because he's incorruptible. Every system, from social media to dating apps to consumerism, is built on the same lie. You are not enough. Not until you buy this, post this, look like this, get chosen by this, and when you finally believe that lie, you become theirs. You perform, you chase, you buy, you lose yourself trying to belong to something that doesn't even see you. But then there's the man who doesn't chase, who doesn't post, who doesn't perform, and suddenly the whole game starts to glitch. Because he's not lonely, he's not angry, he's not broken, he's just not playing anymore. And this refusal to participate, to let your self-worth be dictated by feedback, is a form of rebellion, a rebellion against the entire emotional economy. Because the world can't sell wholeness. It can only sell insecurity with a side of dopamine. That's why solitude is feared. Not because it's painful, but because it's powerful. Because a man who finds peace in his own company becomes immune to manipulation. He doesn't scroll for connection. He doesn't beg for attention. He doesn't break when ignored. He is not programmable. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate." And most people never do. They live on autopilot, reacting to scripts written by others, calling it destiny. But the dangerous man, he stops, he listens, he watches, he asks, is this really mine? About everything, every belief, every desire, every fear. And if the answer is no, He lets it die, and every death makes him freer. There is something unnerving about a man who doesn't flinch when you walk away, a man who doesn't beg, doesn't follow, doesn't explain himself into exhaustion just to be understood. It unsettles people. Not because he's cruel, but because they were never used to love without dependence. Connection to them is always wrapped in some form of need. But he doesn't need you, and so, when he chooses to stay, it means something. Because he doesn't stay out of fear, he doesn't stay because he's lost, he stays because he means it. And that's what makes him dangerous. His presence is a decision, not a compulsion. This kind of man can't be seduced with flattery or threatened with abandonment. You can walk away and he won't chase. You can test his boundaries and he'll let you go, not out of apathy but principle, because he knows the cost of betraying himself just to be held. He's done that before. He's lived that lie, and now he would rather lose you than lose himself again. That quiet resolve terrifies people. It confronts them with their own emptiness, their own games, their own noise. Because most people don't speak to connect, they speak to escape themselves. But he listens. He hears the silence between your words. He sees the performance beneath your smile. And that honesty feels invasive to people who are still hiding from their own reflection. You can't perform around a man who doesn't need to perform. You either show up real or you feel exposed. And so they call him cold, detached, emotionally unavailable. But he isn't unavailable. He's just not accessible to falseness. He doesn't bond over wounds he hasn't processed or humor that masks despair. He bonds through presence, depth, clarity. And if you're still addicted to noise, to chaos, to being seen just enough to not feel invisible, he will feel like a threat. Because he doesn't play tug-of-war with your soul, he just lets go of the rope. Nietzsche once wrote, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." And this man obeys himself. Not his urges, not his wounds, not his culture. Himself. And that obedience to the inner law, to his own rhythm, makes him a heretic in a world that worships conformity. You can't sell him shame. You can't trap him in guilt. He has looked his darkness in the eye and did not flinch, so he does not live reactively. He moves like a man who has nothing to prove. Because he doesn't. You can't use fear to control a man who has made peace with being alone. You can't lure him with what he doesn't crave. And that kind of power? It's not loud, it's not boastful, it's silent, steady, and deeply earned. It radiates. And the world doesn't know what to do with that kind of man, so it tries to label him, shrink him, repackage him. But he does not fit. He was never meant to.